North Dakota. One more new state.
Well, let's add the last of the northern border states, North Dakota. So that just leaves me 2 eastern states, 4 down the middle, and we will get to them. Good morning, YouTube. Well, I'm in the Red River Valley, and just into North Dakota a little ways from the south. And out here, the land is very flat, and as you can see behind me, a lot of corn. But today I am visiting the F.A. Bagg Bonanza farm. As you can see, they have a lot of buildings here. They do tours. They're open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's a $5 entry fee for adults, and there's a lot of history here. Now, my first question was, what's a Bonanza farm? Well, in the mid 1860s, actually before, I think it was 1864 maybe, Lincoln signed the permission to have the Northern Pacific Railroad come through. They got to this area in 1872. Now, it was financed by some bankers back east that went bankrupt, and part of the deal with the railroad is they own the land 20 miles on either side of the railroad right away. They got permission to sell that land off at close to the rate the government was selling to people. I mean, this was the big push west, open land, and so about a mile from here, way across the cornfield, I don't know if you can see the tip of the elevators over there, but a man by the name of Downing bought a big chunk of land, about 9,000 acres, and he was from Pennsylvania. He didn't come out here to run the place. He sent his nephew, F.A. Bagg, out to build some buildings. The foreman he'd hired quit, and a year later, and he offered the foreman job to Mr. Bagg, with the stipulation that if he worked for him for 20 years, he would get ownership of 1/4 of the land, be paid a $500 bonus, and that all worked out. In 1913, when Mr. Downing died, Mr. Bagg got that. But over all the time, he invested in land that came up for sale around it. So the land I'm actually on borders the old Downing place, but was a homesteader's place that their cabin was down here a little ways. And he tried to talk, Mr. Bagg tried to talk the Mr. Downing's children into modernizing, to get away from mule and horsepower and get modern gasoline-powered tractors and equipment. They would have had to invest in some of their earnings from the place, and they didn't see any use to them for that. So he basically in winter of 1914-15, he moved the buildings over here. He built the foundations. They moved this big house, which is the first place he had built, and barns and machinery sheds. They moved them over on rollers, and he basically set it up for his own farm. Pretty good idea. So these rollers are the ones that were used to move the buildings from the Downing farm a mile across the frozen fields and down a path to get them here. The main house is split up into sections. This front section would have been where he lived, and then I'll take you inside and show you a couple of things. Like through that door is where the hired hands would eat. That back door went into the back way into the kitchen. Upstairs were bunk rooms for the men in the front, and they had their own set of stairs coming down, and the back end was for the women. There was a wall between. I'll show you that. And they're pretty big house. So this is where the hands would eat, and it's right off of the kitchen, but they didn't get served through the kitchen. Is this little window down here? That's where the women could look through and see what was needed and place it. So this room was left the way it is, the way it was found when they first started making this, restoring the buildings. And this is the upstairs of the big house. Where she's standing, there was a wall to separate. This is the men's side, that was the women's side, where got to keep them separate. Right behind the main house is the ice house. They would use that, fill it up with ice, packed with sawdust. That was basically for the refrigeration. This little bump out in the back is coming off the kitchen. There's a step down. They would move ice into the back, and this would be basically a big walk-in refrigerator. When they did get electric in here in 1938, they converted this into a refrigerated house, and this big hook out here is through those big doors. This is where they would butcher the animals inside there, and they had access to all the ice, cooling things down, of course, right next to the kitchen. So this is the kitchen. Huge work island, which I would probably need for a place this size. And of course, that wood stove is not the original. The original was all the way across. And of course, they had the hand pump here to get water up from the cistern, probably rainwater. And then you got your pantry right off of it.
The sausage machine.
So a nice big cream separator, which when you have 25 cows, you definitely put this to some use, because that's the butter churn. And they had their own set of scales, so they could weigh the stuff coming in and out. And we're talking a big farm here that had a lot of crops coming in. This back section was the old foreman's kitchen, but Mr. Bagg turned that into his office. So I got a couple of shots in there. So this is a tally book where the workers, their names, and what they got paid. Like the full-time guys are $1 a day. This guy only worked the 3 days that month. And this one guy right here, looks like he just sort of hung out. He didn't get paid at all. And then, of course, the ones like the 3/4 or a half probably would have worked just a part of that particular day. But this really cool is that this place actually has the records of what people were getting paid back in October of 1894 and beyond. So if you can, I don't know if you can see this. This is the plans for taking a truck from the 1920s and turning it into a motorhome. Beds. These are plans that they found here on the farm. That's a picture of the that 1926 motorhome that I just showed you the plans of. I know some of my schoolie friends would love to have that. Okay, so this 1927 International is the truck that was turned into a motorhome. Here's a nice shot of it. And he took this across, or down to Florida and across the west. And at one point a windstorm, seems to be a theme here, destroyed the motorhome part, but they still have the truck. And a beautiful truck it is. Back here's a blacksmith shop, and I can show you a shot of that with a supply shed, basically typical shed with lots of shelves and lots of stuff on it. The main house is split up into sections. This front section would have been where he lived, and then I'll take you inside and show you a couple of things. Like through that door is where the hired hands would eat. That back door went into the back way into the kitchen. Upstairs were bunk rooms for the men in the front, and they had their own set of stairs coming down, and the back end was for the women. There was a wall between, I'll show you that. And a pretty big house. So this is the blacksmith shop, and a lot of the equipment, shaft driven, run off this motor here. So this was a men's shower. Basically you'd have a chain pull here, a pipe that ran out of either building. And I don't think I've ever run across one like this before. Now by far the largest structure, as you'd expect, is the barn, and where these windows were used to be stalls, a lot of horses and mules for a farm this size. Now that barn and the machinery shed back here, which was one of four, there's only three left that have been rebuilt. But 1954, a tornado came through and flattened that and pushed the barn over. And it stayed that way for a number of years, and they've got some guys in to pick it back up and straighten it back up, put it back together. And within a couple of years, another windstorm came in and pushed it back down. So the only original part now that's left are the two cupolas. The rest of this barn was built. They now use it for weddings and receptions and any kind of get-together. You probably noticed there's no trees here. Mr. Bagg liked fresh air blowing through. Personally, I prefer shade, but there seems to be a constant breeze blowing through, so that would have helped. But as you can see, just how flat the land is here in the Red River Valley. That's why there's so many big Bonanza farms here, or were. This is probably the only one left. And if you get a chance, it's just off of I-29 running from Sioux Falls up to Fargo. It's about half an hour north of the South Dakota border, and it's an interesting place to get an idea of just how these big old farms on the prairie operated and just how much space there was. So I'm going to get back on the road and see where I go next. See you later, YouTube. So this Minneapolis Moline is the same model I used to have many, many years ago. And the scariest part was if you were standing here and using the brakes and something was hooked up to the PTO, your legs were not very far away from a lot of fast spinning steel. And when you're bush hogging, that could get exciting.
The two-man.
So another chainsaw for my forestry friends. So hopefully you can see this through the glare. Must have been a real animal to hang on to that thing.